Hey, all, Doug with D&E in the garage. Today we're going to try something different. I'm driving back from the U-Pull yard right now, inside my faithful XJ. I'm on the highway. I'm on Route 78 West, heading back from Allentown, Pennsylvania, heading back to New Jersey, 78 East, I meant. And I'm going to try the podcast from in here today. The reason is that my podcast today is about driving an XJ, the experience of driving an XJ, all right? Let's get a little background here. I've had many vehicles in my life. I've had many Jeeps in my life. And a lot of those Jeeps have been lifted. A lot of those Jeeps have been stock. And I've enjoyed all of them. You know, there's a certain magic to every vehicle. You know, if you drive a vehicle long enough, you become one with that vehicle. And there are things you love about it and things you hate about it. This XJ was meant to be a bridge vehicle. I didn't buy this XJ because I love XJs per se. I like them a lot more now than when I bought this thing. I'd only ever owned one other XJ before, personally, and it was 2001 or a 99. It was 2001. It was lifted up like 5 inches at 33s under it, and it was a fun vehicle, you know? It was good to wheel. It was pretty reliable, but it was a lifted Jeep. The reason I got it was because the girl who owned it, it had this gnarly death wobble, right? Like really bad death wobble. And the girl who owned it just wanted to get out from underneath it. At the time, I had a 2005 Subaru RS that had a bad throwout bearing, and I had been chasing issues on that thing for the longest time. I just wanted to be out from underneath the RS. She was under the impression that the death wobble was unfixable. I was under the impression that the RS's issues were not worth fixing, so we traded. Clean trade, all right? And long story short, within about a week, death wobble was solved, you know? And I drove that thing daily. My wife drove it daily a little bit. It was a good Jeep. But it was very much the experience that you would expect to go along with driving a lifted Jeep, all right? So I didn't really have a true sense of what it's like to drive an XJ, a stock XJ, a stock Jeep Cherokee, all right? Now I've been driving this one for a couple months now, and it's such a unique experience and such an enjoyable experience that I feel compelled to tell you about it. All right, I feel compelled to share with you the experience of driving an XJ. And I'm going to tell you right now that the purpose of this podcast is to convince you that sometime in your life, you need to daily a stock XJ, because it's a heck of an experience, especially today. I don't know that this experience would have been so unique when this thing was first designed or years earlier. Here's why, all right? The XJ came out in 1984, so it was designed in the early 80s, possibly even conceived in the late 70s. And it wasn't changed very much. Small, very tiny things were changed. There was a major remodel in 1997 for the 98 model year, but that was just a facelift, all right? They changed some of the trim and the door panels, but first of all, they did change it. They didn't change it much. So they took a vehicle that was made designed in the early 80s, then they upgraded it for what would have been current in the mid 90s, and now it's 2018. So driving this vehicle is like driving a time capsule. You know, it's when you look at the outside of an XJ, it doesn't look like any modern car. It doesn't even look like any vehicle. They made this thing until 2001. It doesn't even look like any vehicle that was made in the 90s or early 2000s. It's square. It's a box. It's sharp right angles and 45-degree angles, and it's a wild-looking vehicle. And you know, everybody knows that the Cherokee is almost the undisputed start of modern SUVs. That's a whole other podcast that will be coming at some point. I'm a rant on how you can thank modern vehicles on the Cherokee. But it was conceived to be a utilitarian vehicle. It has a pretty high tow cap for what it is. You know, really reliable four-wheel drive. All that said, it's tiny. This thing is small, all right? If you park this vehicle next to a modern sedan, it's shorter than that modern sedan, right? Find me a 2018 anything, Accord, Altima, forget about American sedans. You park this thing, it's like a foot shorter. And it's only, like, if it's taller, it's only a couple inches taller than these modern sedans. Forget about modern SUVs, you know what I mean? And it's narrow, right? I've driven a couple Subarus. This thing is not much wider as far as shoulder room than my 98 Forester was. It's a small, tiny vehicle, and I never grasped that because all my friends had lifted ones, which gives you this false sense of size. The one I owned was lifted, gave me this false sense of size. The only other XJ I ever had, like I said, it was lifted 4 or 5 inches, something like that, on 33s. You don't feel small if you're rolling around with a 5-inch lift on 33s. You don't feel small. I feel small in this thing, but it's awesome. All right, I'm about to pass, what is this? It looks like a mid-2000s Chevy Equinox, and this thing is smaller than it. It's definitely shorter. I mean, the ground clearance is better, but like you know, it's taller from the ground, but shorter. It's just a smaller vehicle, you know? When they first designed this version of the Cherokee, everybody knows there's a full-frame version of the Cherokee, the SJ, that came before this vehicle. That was a full-frame, body-on-frame truck. You know, it looked like a Suburban with 2 doors or something. When they designed this one, it was meant to be small, and it was meant to be fuel efficient for the time. They were never going to put the straight 6 4-liter in this thing. The first 2 years that the XJ was produced, and I mentioned this in some videos earlier this month, it had a 4-cylinder, the 2.5 that everybody knows, and it had the AMC V6 2.8 liter V6 was the biggest motor that was ever meant to go in this thing. It was supposed to be a small, tiny, maybe commuter Jeep, definitely more efficient. You know, we're talking about the beginning of gas crisis and stuff when this thing, or the end of the gas crisis when this thing was being designed. So you think about Jeep and you think about SUVs, and then you buy a Jeep Cherokee, and all the things you were thinking don't seem to carry over in the size. It's small, it's tiny, but it doesn't feel small or tiny. And the reason is this. The reason it does not feel small or tiny, 2 reasons actually. The first is something that's true of all older vehicles. The pillars. The pillars are not as big. All right, modern safety standards have caused the pillars on vehicles to become much larger. They need to house side curtain airbags. They need to be able to support the roof better in event of a rollover. This thing was put out in 1984. None of that crap applies, right? This door trim is metal. The trim inside the XJ is metal. Stuff like that doesn't happen anymore. So the first reason that it doesn't feel small, even though it really is you can see out of all these windows. When you look out the back of this thing, you don't see any car. You just see outside. You know, you just see through the windows. It's awesome. You know, you get a 360-degree view. There's blind spots. The only potential blind spot in an XJ is that tire. They didn't put the tire underneath the vehicle because it would have affected the ground clearance. And for whatever reason, they didn't put a tire carrier on the back. I've always wondered why they didn't, but they put it inside the vehicle. And it's kind of nice because your tire doesn't get all dry rotted, you know? The other reason that this vehicle does not feel small is because of the way it handles, all right? This thing is a solid front axle with what they call an inverted Y steering linkage. Now, what that means is solid front axle, and then from your pitman arm, which is what's attached to your steering wheel, you have a drag link that goes pitman arm to the knuckle on your passenger side, and then instead of having a tie rod that goes from that knuckle to the other knuckle, there's a tie rod that comes off the middle of that drag link. So your steering linkage literally looks like a Y, you know, with this little branch coming off to the other thing. Now that makes the steering very heavy, It does make it a little bit sloppy if you're comparing it to other vehicles that are not solid front axle, but I think it's pretty much on par with every other Jeep. You know, there's a little bit of slop in the steering. But what that does is it makes this thing kind of feel like a truck, and you kind of feel more secure. All right, my wife has a more modern Jeep. She has a 2006 Commander, and we love the thing. It's great. It's our family vehicle. She loves it. It's reliable, great road trip car, nice amenities. But the one thing I hate about driving it is that it's got this super light, independent front suspension steering, and I just don't feel as connected to the road. And don't even get me started on newer drive-by-wire systems that are literally not connected. Drive-by-wire is an electronic steering system. You're not connected at all. This is all connected. When I'm turning the steering wheel, it's connected to this thing, which is connected to that thing, which is connected to those things, which turn the wheels. It's solid linkage all the way down, and I love that. So the ride in this thing, the steering feels heavy. The rest of the ride, I think the best way to describe it is bare bones. It's not uncomfortable. I actually really like these seats. They've got nice bolsters that are not intrusive, but I think they're comfortable seats. The guys in the back would probably disagree. I highly recommend that at some point in your life you seek out a stock XJ, and it has to be a stock one. Here's why. This vehicle was over-engineered. Everything in this vehicle is actually beefier than it needs to be when it's stock. The motor has more than enough torque and top end for what you want to do in a stock XJ, all right? No, it can't pull a house, but considering how small it is, it's got a pretty high tow cap. It might be 4,000 pounds, 5,000 pounds, all right? It's not quick. I wouldn't call it quick, and it's certainly not fast. It's torquey. In the low end, you got good torque to punch you off the line, you know, at a stop sign, gets you moving, and then it settles down. It's a subdued vehicle anyway, you know. The transmission, the two transmissions they put in this thing, the AW4 is the manual, or excuse me, the AW4 is the automatic. That's what's in this one. Then you got the AX5, which is the 5-speed. They are both rock solid transmissions that can handle way more than any stock XJ is ever going to put them through. The U-joints, the differentials, right? This thing didn't get the D35. Actually, that's not true. I think if you have ABS in your Cherokee, which very few did, you have a Dana 35 in the back. Everybody else got either a Chrysler 8 1/4 or some very, very lucky few got a Dana 44 in the back. Don't even bother going to look for them. They've already been found and claimed and ruined. I think it was a tow package option for like 2 years. But the Chrysler 8.25 is a plenty strong differential. The reason that it's not, I submit it's just as strong as the 44. The reason people don't like it as much is because there's not as much aftermarket support. You don't get as many lockers and diff covers and axle shafts and everything else as you do for the Dana 44. Everybody makes stuff for the 44. The 8 1/4 is kind of the red-headed stepchild of the differential world. It's plenty strong for what I'm going to use it for, and if you're keeping your XJ stock, it's plenty strong for what you're going to use it for. You got the Dana 30 in the front. Again, you're not going to break a Dana 30 with a stock XJ doing stock XJ stuff. All right? The transfer case, the 231, I would make an argument that a 242 would be functionally better for a stock XJ, but there's no denying that the 231 is stronger. The 231 is stronger than the 242, but the 242, the Select Track that came in the WJs and the Liberties, has that full-time four-wheel drive so that you can have four-wheel drive on only sort of wet roads. Whereas at the 231, if you lock your four-wheel drive and you drive on the highway on a day like today when it's dry or anywhere, you're going to ruin your tires, put extra strain on your transfer case. The point is, this driveline is over-engineered, right? Which is one of the reasons it's such a good vehicle to modify, because you can go pretty far before you need to start worrying about your transfer case, your transmission, even your axles and stuff. People do obscene stuff on stock XJ axles. I'm talking about crazy gearing, crazy tire size, rock bouncing. I mean, Everything underneath this vehicle was over-engineered. So if you decide to make the choice to drive one of these things stock, you're not gonna have to worry about that stuff. Even the steering, yeah, my steering is a little bit loose. It's got that slop where there's an inch this way and an inch that way before you really get any input to the wheels. But because it's stock, it doesn't matter. It doesn't result in death wobble. It doesn't result in bump steer. It doesn't even really affect the ride. I mean, yeah, I mentioned before, the ride is a little rough because it's solid axles. It's just what it is. If you need a daily, but you also like to tow a little bit, and you live in an area where there's inclement weather, and maybe occasionally your day takes you, you know, down a dirt road across the back end of a cornfield or something, you need to lock that four-wheel drive, look at an XJ, man. You're gonna love it, all right? Yeah, it's simple. It's bare bones. The doors are like this thick. You know what I mean? Like doors on modern cars are, you know, 8 inches thick. Nope, not on the XJ. I'm pretty sure that's why the speakers are on the roof back there instead of in the doors. The doors are both too narrow as far as the opening for the occupants to get in, but also they're too thin this way to get decent speakers in there. That's the other thing. The back seat in this is crazy small. Crazy small. There's literally like this much room for you to crawl in the bottom of the door. And then the seat, here's another weird thing about the XJ. Yeah, this might be a little bit of a disorganized video. It's hard to think properly when you're also driving, but there's no headrests back there. I don't know why. And no, not unless I'm mistaken. I'm not mistaken. No XJ ever came with headrests, and I don't know why. It's really very odd. I mean, certainly having headrests in the back is safer, and they definitely knew that in 1984. And if they didn't, when they did the remodel in 97, why didn't they add headrests? Now, I'm not complaining, because nobody really sits back there. But like, why not headrests? That's one of the many things that's odd. Another thing that's odd is the vanity mirrors on the visors here. They have adjustable lights. Yeah, there's a little switch you can slide to decide how much light you want. Some parts of this vehicle are so bare bones, and then other parts, like, why add that extra amenity? It seems weird. Does it not seem weird to have adjustable vanity mirror lights, but they didn't give you headrests back there? I don't know. That's part of the fun of this vehicle. It's quirky. Oh, another thing, and this one I actually don't love a lot. This one I kind of hate. There's no place to put anything in this car. That's the only problem, all right? There's a very small center console right here. Not very small. It's considering how wide this vehicle is, it's what you would expect to find. It's got an average for its age size glove box, but there's no center stack cubbies like there are on a lot of cars, and there's no door pockets. No door pockets. And I know that this is something that has plagued the XJ community or been the bane of their existence for years. I've seen numerous threads on Jeep Forum about people, different aftermarket things you can add over here, or people taking them out of Fords or something. I haven't figured out what I'm gonna do, but it's really annoying. You know, just dumb stuff. Tools. I've always got a couple screwdrivers or something in my door pocket. There's no door pocket over there. So everything ends up on the floor on the driver's side over there. So that's not awesome. Let's to be fair, considering I squawked about how awesome this is, let's talk about things that I don't love about the XJ real quick. Just to finish up this video, and then we'll be done and I'll leave you guys alone. No door pockets, and as a greater expansion of that point, not a ton of storage anyway, but I think a lot of older cars may fall into that category, and it is a smaller, lightweight, no frills car, so I didn't mean to play devil's advocate. So that's one thing I don't love. I don't love that your only option for a spare tire is inside or on the roof. I'm not going to drive around in my stock XJ with a tire on the roof. It actually really affects the handling on the highway, I found. I did it in my WJ, friggin' hated it. It only lasted a week before I took it down and I made a carrier for the back. You guys have seen that in other videos. So the spare tire, I understand why they did it. I don't love it. Speakers could definitely be better. I understand that because of their placement, the sound is not going to be optimum anyway, but they probably could have put a little more time into the speakers. But again, you bought it a bare bones. You know, this is the Sport too. I think I should correct. There was one version of the XJ that had door pockets. I believe the 98 to 01 Cherokee Custom. Is that what it is? It had leather seats, leather door panels, and it had door pockets. If you ever find those are gold. I don't care if you've never owned a Jeep and are never going to. If you ever find some in a junkyard, you pull them, either hit me up, I'll buy them from you, or put them on Jeep Forum, they'll be gone in 10 minutes. Everybody's looking for those. So those are 3 things, just to backtrack, that I don't love about the XJ. Storage, tire, speakers. Windshield wipers. They're not normal windshield wipers, the kind that have an eye on the end. Like, I'm talking about the arm, not the actual wiper blades, but the wiper arm. The way it mounts to the vehicle is not like this splined eye that goes over a spline shaft and then you tighten a nut down. It's this weird tab you pull out and it releases it and pulls it off. It's very difficult. The one side I can't get off, the other side I got off, and now I can't get it to go back on properly. That may be just an old school thing that they were doing in the 80s. I haven't ever owned an 80s vehicle, and you have to remember with the XJ, they changed very little. And that's, honestly, that's part of the thing that made this thing so popular. Had there been a huge difference between years, this thing might not be so popular, but there are a ton of parts that I can use from a 1988 on this vehicle. That's crazy. That's crazy. From 1984 to 2001, I'm gonna throw out a random number. I'm sure somebody's done the math. I'll bet that 50% of the parts are the same. They made small changes to the 4-liter motor, small changes. The differentials will swap right in. Control arms are the same. Steering boxes. I mean, interior is not going to be the same. You can't use the same doors, but there's a ton of stuff that they just didn't bother changing. And at some points, you know, it's kind of annoying because you're dealing with 1984 technology. But at other points, it's pretty nice because I can go into the junkyard and just, they're everywhere too. They're everywhere. You buy yourself a stock XJ, you are not going to need to buy new parts. You'll be able to go to any U-Pull and go and find a row of 15 XJs and just pull whatever you need. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Time to wrap this thing up. All right, if you have the opportunity in your life, drive a stock XJ. Doesn't matter what year. The 2000 fell into my lap, so that's the one I've been driving. At some point in my life, I'd very much like to drive one of the older ones. All right, I saw one at the junkyard today. It was an 88, had all blue interior. Yeah, man, if I could find one like that that was nice, I would drive that. I would absolutely drive that, and I would drive it daily, and I would love every minute of it. At some point, these Jeeps are gonna be gone, all right? Because most people lift them, and as soon as you start lifting a vehicle, you destroy it, all right? Now, I'm not hating on lifting vehicles because I lift vehicles, but it is a fact. Like my WJ, I can never bring it back to stock. Things have been cut, and things have been trimmed, and things have been modified. That Jeep is going to be lifted until the day, you know, it rots back into the earth and goes back to Mother Earth. So this XJ, I'm trying to keep it stock. You know, I've made some small modifications to fit my needs for a stock vehicle, but all in all, I am going to keep this vehicle stock. I suggest they're cheap. A stock XJ is not expensive, but I suspect they're not going to stay like that forever. Get yourself a stock XJ, drive it daily. You can pick one up for under $2 grand. This one only had 150,000 miles on it when I got it. It's pretty good. I can live with that. All right, guys, if you enjoyed this, and obviously I hope you did, please like the video, share it with a friend. I'm trying to help the awareness of our brand, man. Like, that's why I talk about these things, because I feel very passionately about Jeep and the Jeep brand, and it worries me sometimes that maybe because of where our brand is headed, and it's not a bad thing, but maybe the things that I love about Jeep are gonna get forgotten. The news not bad, I just hope that things like stock XJs don't get forgotten, you know? I want my daughter's first vehicle to be able to be a crappy old stock XJ or something, you know, when the time comes. So, thanks for watching. Like I said, like the video. If you liked it, subscribe to the channel, share with a friend. Thanks for watching. See you next time.